how efficient are they? How many do we get back? I know we send out, what are our numbers for coming back? Because I know it's easy to say we're going to send a survey out, but if we only get, say, 20% back, I don't think it's going to be a good enough. Obviously parents talking and, your word of mouth, so forth, is a good feedback.
That's actually going to be in the next presentation.
Oh, all right. Okay, then we'll
talk about the surveys and random sampling.
Then we'll go with that.
But if I can, just quickly, on March 8th, we're going to the Martin Luther King Playing Group. We're going to take our award, our honorees from the last 3 years, including Joe from last year, are going to be invited to the Y for breakfast and a youth forum to talk about their perceptions about bullying and about violence, to get their opinions that we can use to try to use that leadership group within the schools.
Great.
Jeff?
A couple of things. One is something this big, especially despite the hard work that you and Don and others have put into this, almost always has unintended consequences. Just be alert. Secondly, let me give you a hypothetical. A 7th grader...
Sit down for this, Jeff.
A 7th grader is bullied by a junior in high school at the Wareham Cinema or Wareham Crossing over the weekend. The 7th grader walks into the homeroom Monday morning and reports this bullying incident to her teacher, his teacher. What would be the response of that teacher to that situation?
That's a great question, because that is very much a new element to this law. That event that happens Saturday night at the mall or something similar to that, whether it's cyberbullying or whether it's direct contact, is now an investigatable issue. So the marker for that is if it flows into the schoolhouse the following week or whenever.
But they're in separate schools. They would never interact, in theory. That junior would have graduated by the time the 7th grader got to high school. As I'm reading the bullying shall be prohibited, number 2, it almost sounds like this goes, it's a Wareham school policy, it's the law, but I'm trying to imagine how a 7th grade teacher is going to interact, is going to deal with a situation like that when it involves a student in a different school that would never see that person within school. So this notion that it's going to quote the language, interfere with the orderly operation of the school, disruptive to the educational process, it's not going to be. So how would that fall within the purview of this law?
It may, because that student may not be functioning, and that student may then draw other students into the issue, and it somehow interrupts what's going on. But just that student not being able to continue to function in their usual way, to continue to be educated, is part of it. The law does not differentiate building to building, because there are certainly those districts that have 4 middle schools, and it could very well happen in that way as well, that they're age-like, but they do go to different schools. So the sequence would be that student reports it, that person who it was reported to refers it to an investigator or to the principal, and that person meets with them and finds out exactly what happened, how the student's doing, how safe the student feels both in and out of school, and are there witnesses, are there other people that saw this happen, and they can investigate it, and they would then involve the person at the high school, the investigator at the high school, to work with interviewing the aggressor at that point. So the fact that they're in two different schools really doesn't matter. Where it does matter, even if a child has dropped out of school, and the law is specific about this, as long as the student is 21 or under, then it is covered by this law. If it's over 21, then it's immediately referred to law enforcement. But that person doesn't need to be in the same school. They don't even need to be in school. They need to be, the key is the impact that event has on that student.
Talk about broad.
Very broad. And I will tell you that I think the two things that would be challenged, this is my opinion, doesn't necessarily mean that it holds, but I think the two things that will be challenged will be events that happen out of school hours, but also events that happen with students that really don't have any reason to be in contact with each other. The outcome may be quite simple, actually. The outcome may be that there is the substantiation that bullying did occur, could be that, and the resolution for the victim is that a counselor or a staff member puts together a safety plan for them and says, let's talk about how you could handle that part of your day differently. Could you go a different route? Can we put you on a different bus? Could you meet with this group of friends rather than that group of friends? Just let's talk about some of the possibilities that might avoid that situation for you. And so it becomes more of a counseling session of trying to figure out how that person can structure their lives in a way that that's not there. There's another group of students also who put themselves in those positions and decide that they're not going to necessarily make the right decision to stay away from those kids and do need to be counseled to avoid future conflict. There's a phrase that's used in psychology called the provocative victim. And the provocative victim is the person who is victimized, but they often repetitively set themselves up for victimization. It doesn't make the victimization right, it just means that they put themselves in situations that it keeps happening. And so it is working with those students to be able to get them to make different decisions. One of the obligations of the law is, for example, with children with special needs, that if a child is felt to be by the team either at risk because of past experience to be a victim, or they're at risk to be an aggressor. So we have some students with special needs who are quite fragile, and we have others who are quite difficult, can be really challenging. For both of those groups of students, we really need to look at the question, do these students need to have some enhancement in social skills interactions? Meeting with counselors more often, how could you handle that differently? Those sorts of questions.
Sounds like what you're saying is, once the governor signed this law, if you're a student in any Massachusetts school, you can be disciplined for being the aggressor, and you have a right to counseling if you're the victim, even if it's not in the same school district.
The right to counseling, I think you have the right to a safety plan, which may include counseling, it may include some discussions and so forth. But yes, I think that's broad. It is that broad. It is really a child protection.
A statewide child protection.
Yes.
Okay. I have some questions on the reporting procedures. They seem redundant anyway, but I can take it up with you at another time. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Guess what? I can talk now. I want to keep it quick. I know time is drawing, and you've got another presentation to make, but there are a couple of things. Yeah, I know, but there's a couple of things a couple of comments and a couple of questions. This is a quick question, only because I don't know. Were there any resources or additional time and training for you in being the spearhead for this policy? Was there any provisions for that given by the state in developing these individual policies?
There were, let me use the right language, there were low-cost opportunities to be provided with training, that low or no cost, I should say, that were made available, many of them through Mass Aggression Reduction Center, but there's a marketing side to this, and I'm excluding Massachusetts Aggression.
That's fine. So there was some training for you?
Yes.
Okay. But here's the thing I'm getting at, kind of bothers me a little bit, and I hope you can put me at ease. Me too. Was there any provision for providing relief or substitution for your time in developing this plan? Not only with the meetings, and I really, really appreciate all the help that all the volunteers did, but to your time. I mean, you have got a full-time position here. You are responsible for a huge part of our budget, and you are the overseer of our special needs program. Was there any provision made to give relief to the district for your time?
No.
See, that's what bothers me about these state mandates. You know, we are saddled with the responsibility to get this done, and it should be done because it is the law. I'm not debating whether we should do it or not, but it's the same old story over and over and over again, that they don't even get the final revisions of the format to you in a timely manner. So that increases the time that you have to do in supervising and bringing the group together, getting information, getting input, and so forth and so on. Meanwhile, that's time away, basically, from what we're paying you to do.
Yes.
And that bothers me. You know, it bothers me because no one has the foresight to know that every time this gets passed down to the local level, all right, someone's got to pay the bill, whether it be in dollars and cents or in time. So just give me my opportunity to be on my soapbox. But I really appreciate this because I know that you had to juggle a multitude of responsibilities to get this thing done. You know, and sometimes that goes unnoticed. I just want you to know how much I notice it. And I want to thank you for it. Thank you.
That's not really water in the container.
It's protein powder.
The other thing that, well, we're on resources, the other thing that I think we have to consider is, as we're going through this budget process, as you've heard, we're in an ad hoc and with the budget process and so forth and so on, and you know as well as I do that we have made tremendous cuts in administration across the board over the last several years. So right now, our administrative structure is pretty lean and mean across the board. And as this thing, I don't know where this is going to go, I don't think anybody does, but as this thing blossoms, as the investigatory process and the counseling process and all of the service necessary, I think that is going to be, I'm just guessing now, my little crystal ball, an incredible drain of whatever small resources we have in terms of personnel. I, to be quite honest with you, don't think we've got the personnel to do this in the right way. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I don't think we've got it in administration. I don't think we've got the services available right now that may have to be available, and we certainly don't have the resources to pay for it. So that kind of bothers me about the implementation of the law and how we go, because we know as well as I do that in many of these cases, outside counseling is going to be required. And so, where does that come from? It doesn't drop out of the sky. You know, it doesn't come with a check for the town of Wareham. So, I guess that bothers me.
May I just
go ahead.
agree with you?
Well, no, I hope you would disagree with me. I really said, no, you're crazy, that we can make this work. Go ahead.
I do want to agree with you, and it isn't, in the last 2 weeks, I've had 25 people spend 2 hours apiece getting trained. people who are leaving their roles as counselors, as assistant principals, as people who have other things to do as well. I have to tell you, though, that they didn't blink.
And I'm sure they didn't. No, I know what? That's the staff at Wareham.
Correct. And that's all I wanted to say, was that they didn't blink, but they realize that it's a necessary thing. They realize, as all of you realize, that we are concerned about